I'm Brittany, this is Shelianne, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch gay things. Today, we continue reading through Volume 2 of Husky and His White Cat Shizun. We are on page 313 for Chapter 74, which is called This Venerable One's Fault. That's the kind of chapter title you really want to start the day with. We just heard about, a handkerchief that is apparently, Shizun's handkerchief that Moran just kind of has and just kind of offered to Shimei, and there are certain implications, but this story is kind of the king of context. Until you have the full context on literally any given thing, just don't make presumptions about it. Just don't, because you're probably wrong. So that's what we're starting with today. We read for a couple of hours. We take a break about halfway through to get tea and such. There are trigger warnings in the description if you need them. Please no spoilers in the chat, because there are some people who are reading along for the very first time, like me. I have not read this before. I have no idea what's coming, what's happening next. Other than that, I think that's it. I think we can just start. Okay. We usually cover about 40 to 50 pages. That is the goal. All right. I want to know about this handkerchief, so I'm normal about this. Moran was dumbstruck. A long while passed before he snapped out of it, his entire face bright red as he waved his hands frantically. Not that I don't know. This isn't mine. Where did my handkerchief go? I don't. Oh God, how am I going to get out of this one? Moran stared at that square silk. I'm too excited. At that square of silken cloth with a high tongue flower sewn on a corner. But he couldn't for the life of him remember why he even had it. He racked his brain in a panic, then suddenly smacked his head. Ah! What is it? I remembered! Moran let out a sigh of relief and took the handkerchief from Shimei's hands with a smile. Sorry, this isn't mine, so I can't give it to you. Shimei fell silent. I didn't even say I wanted it to begin with. That's Shimei's thought. Literally, he just had thought, I didn't even say I wanted it to begin with. Like, I understand. See, this is the weird place that we find ourselves with in Shimei. And I realize I'm like 3 sentences into this session. Give me a second. This is the weird thing. Like, on one hand, I understand the tone, especially after having read, like, a lot of, danmei, specifically, like, translated danmei. Like, this is not my first rodeo. So, like, I understand that, the implication is like, I didn't say, it's not automatically rude. Like, I didn't even say I wanted it to begin with. Like, it's not necessarily that at all. It's more of it's harder for me, a filthy American, to describe it. But I can kind of see it like as more of a innocently, like, clueless of like, oh, I can't give that to you. And be like, but I didn't say I wanted it to begin with. Like, it's fine. Like, that kind of subtext going on to it. But the thing with Shimei is that, and I might be entirely making this up in my head, is that Shimei already kind of has this vibe going on of kind of seems fine, but on the other hand, if you just tilt the picture frame a little bit, it could also potentially be not fine. And they continually do this to me with Shimei. We are a paragraph and a half in. It's fine. It's not Shizun's either. It's not like everything with a high tongue on it belongs to Shizun. Moran folded the handkerchief neatly and tucked it back into his robes, beyond relieved that he hadn't accidentally taken his Shizun's possession. It's Shiishides. It's not Chuaning's. It's just Shiishides. Shimei looked thoughtful. Shiishides. We've been living together these last few days. So maybe I grabbed the wrong one from the drying rack this morning or something. How embarrassing. Chimay was silent for a moment, then he smiled gently and said, "It's no big deal." He stood. "It's getting late. We should go pick up Shia. See, the problem is that, well, okay, literally anybody has more of a brain cell than the dumb husky, but Chimay has a little bit more of a brain cell than the dumb husky. So I wonder if it's not going to take as many clues for maybe Chimay to figure it out on the down low. Potentially. They left the house and headed for the cave. They didn't get far before Chimay started slowing down. It wasn't too obvious at first, but then he stumbled on a rock and would have fallen if Moran hadn't reacted quickly and caught him in time. Moran was shocked by Chimay's pallid complexion. "What's wrong?" "It's nothing." Chimay took a deep breath. "I didn't eat much for lunch. Just feeling a little faint. Nothing a bit of rest won't fix." The more he tried to gloss over it, the more Moran worried. Now that he thought about it, Chimay wasn't great at Qigong, and everything here at Peach Blossom Springs, from food to clothes, cost feathers to purchase. Moran had always made sure to give Chimay some feathers, but he had been locked up for a few days now, and Shuemeng was too thoughtless to take care of anyone. The more Moran thought, the more concerned he grew. "You used to skip lunch all the time back at the sect, too, but I've never seen you in such a state," he pressed. "Am I to believe this is the result of only missing one meal? Tell me the truth. When was the last time you ate?" Moran's expression grew even darker at Chimay's reluctance to answer. He grabbed Chimay and started walking in the opposite direction. "Ron, where are you going?" Chimay fretted. "Where the food is," Moran said sharply, but when he turned around, there was only worry in his eyes. "Why didn't you take care of yourself while I was gone?" "That phrase is loaded now." "Thanks, book. You're always thinking about everyone else and putting others first. What about yourself? Have you ever thought about yourself?" I am so firmly with Moran about this. I would do the exact same thing. It's like you haven't eaten in God knows how long. Moran dragged Chimay all the way to a tavern. Normally, Chimay belonged to the healing division and shouldn't have been in the attack division region without a token. However, anxiety had run high ever since the incident with 18, so the Feathered Tribe had lifted that restriction to ease things. "What do you want? Order whatever." "Anything's fine." Chimay seemed a bit guilty. "Sorry, I wanted to come help, but I ended up getting in the way instead." "No need for things like sorry between us." Moran flicked his forehead and gentled his tone. "Go ahead and order. I'll pay for it, and then you can take your time eating." Chimay looked at him. "What about you?" "I have to go pick up Shia. There's a guard at the cave, but I'm still worried, what with the killer still being out there." When Chimay realized that Moran wanted to leave, his eyes seemed to darken for an instant. "Just 2 buns, then," he said quickly. "I'll go with you and eat on the way." Moran was going to try to talk him out of it when the bird-like chitter of feminine voices came from outside. Some dozen young female cultivators, all primped up, entered the building while giggling. "Hey, shopkeep, I have a question," the lady at the head of the group said with a smile. "Did Dashishang reserve the banquet room at this tavern tonight?" Indeed. The shopkeep was all smiles. It hadn't taken long for the Feathered Tribe to figure out that Dashishang liked wine and song, so every single night they held a banquet at one tavern or another. Whether this Dashishang went, a group of giggling ladies was sure to flock. Sure enough, the ladies were thrilled and immediately hurried to reserve their tables. Now and again, their words drifted over to Moran's ears. It was all, "Xiaofeng, how does the painting on my eyebrows look? Do you think Dashishang will like it?" "It's lovely. What do you think about my eyeliner? Is it too flashy? Will it make him think I'm flighty?" And stuff like, "You're so pretty. Dashishang will like you for sure. Yesterday I saw him look at you quite a few times." Stop teasing me. If only. Dashishang's type is definitely someone like Jiji, refined and so well-read. Moran had no words. Even in such troubled times, these ladies could flutter about like this over some guy. The corner of his mouth twitched and he turned to Chimay. "Buns it is, then. Let's grab and go. I'll worry if I leave you here alone in this cave of carnivorous beasts." Chimay shook his head at Moran's expression, his laughter light. The tastiest thing on the menu at this tavern was their large, drool-worthy meat buns. We love it when an author references themselves. Moran bought 10 at once and gave them all to Chimay. When Moran glanced at Shimei nibbling happily on the buns as they walked, he was finally able to relax a little. No one expected the bun to do Shimei in. His stomach was already weak to start with, so suddenly eating an oily bun after having had nothing in him for so long left him hurting in no time. Now Moran really couldn't leave to go pick up Shiishiri. He carried a pale and sweaty Shimei back to the campus pavilion in a frantic rush and laid him down on the bed he had tidied, then dashed out to ask for a physician. After giving him some medicine and warm water, Moran sat by the bed filled with self-reproach as he looked at Shimei's pallid face. "Does it still hurt? Here, I'll rub your tummy." Shimei's voice was quiet and weak. "No need, it's okay." Moran's large and well-defined hand had already reached over to gently knead him through the quilt. Maybe it was because the pressure was just right and it felt good, but Shimei didn't protest. His breaths evened out under the attentive kneading and he fell asleep. Moran stayed until Shimei was sound asleep before getting ready to leave. Before he'd stood, his hand was caught. Moran's eyes, black with a tinge of purple, widened. "Shimei? It hurts. Don't leave." The beauty's eyes were still closed, and he seemed to be talking in his sleep. Moran stood, locked in place. Shimei had never asked anyone for anything. He was always the one helping others without any expectation of receiving the same. Only while asleep would he plead with Moran to stay in such a soft voice. So Moran sat back down, gazing fondly at the face that he yearned for day and night, while continuing to massage his stomach. Outside the lattice window, peach blossom petals drifted lazily by as the sky darkened. That was a scene break. Now it's become a thing with my brain to just do this. Despite, I know I've said it before, not actually being suspicious of Shimei. It just feels like that if one wanted to, adjust the frame, why doesn't Shimei want him to go pick up Shiishiri? Why? It could be construed as him feigning illness to keep him from doing so. And he's finally asked. He never asks for anything. But he's asking this time. I realize how crazy this sounds, especially in all the extreme likelihood that I am dead ass wrong. I am not looking at chat right now. But these are just, it's become a thing in my brain now. At first it was like, oh, this is so funny. And then now my brain won't stop doing it. And I may have said this before, I'm not entirely sure. But if I turn out to be vindicated in any way, I may actually get up and leave the room. By the time Moran remembered that it is so hard not to read the chat right now. By the time Moran remembered that he had told his little Shidi he'd be back for dinner, it was already midnight. "Oh no!" Moran jumped to his feet, smacking his head over and over. "Oh no, no!" By then, Shimei was deeply asleep. Moran dashed outside and was about to sprint to the cave when a blue light flashed in the sky and the Xuanji elder descended from above with a child in his arms, a child who held a little clay jar. "Xuanji elder!" Xuanji shot Moran a reproachful glance. "Hello. Sorry, I'm too excited. Anyway. What happened? Didn't you say you were going to go pick him up?" "I will leave this room. If I hadn't been concerned and gone to check on him after all, my disciple would have had to wait in that cave till dawn." This disciple was wrong. Moran lowered his head, but nonetheless lifted his eyes to look at Chu Wanning. "Shidi." Xuanji put Chu Wanning down. Chu Wanning, still holding that clay jar, looked calmly at Moran. "Have you eaten yet?" Moran hadn't expected to be the first thing he said, and he could only reply dumbly, "Not yet." So Chu Wanning walked over and offered him the jar. "Have some," he said mildly. "It's still warm." Oh! 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 Oh my god, did you ever see that one meme that was designed to just pull at the heartstrings, but it had that picture of the dog sitting in the middle of the road, like sitting up in the middle of a road that with like snow coming down, and somebody put the caption of like, I waited, and you're supposed to feel like, oh, even though it was probably a photo shoot, the dog was probably supposed to be there, but like the idea, you know, just kind of makes you go, for a second, that's this times like 10. Oh, oh no. Xuanji put Chuaning down. Oh, sorry, no, see? And I tried to relive it because it was, ooh. Moran stood there motionlessly for a while. By the time he came back around, he had already pulled the little guy into a hug along with his clay jar. Okay, I will. The silly kid had been worried that the soup might go cold, and he had taken off his outer robe to wrap it around the jar. His small body felt chilly in Moran's arms. Moran pressed their foreheads together, nuzzling him softly, and for the first time in 2 lives, he spoke these words and meant them. Sorry, it was my fault. They bid Xuanji good night and went inside the pavilion. Chuaning's outer robe was now too wrinkled to wear, and Moran worried that his shidi might need the warmth, so he went to the inner room to find him a blanket. Chuaning yawned and climbed onto a wooden bench holding the clay jar, and he was about to take out 2 bowls for the soup when his gaze landed on the meat buns that Shimei hadn't finished. He blinked. Silence. Also absolutely fucking mean of her to give us a forehead moment, except it's during the de-age period. That was mean. Hopping off the bench, Chuaning walked over to the bedroom and looked expressionlessly at that beautiful person lying on the bed inside. He neither grew angry nor said a word, but icy tendrils seeped out of his bones, and he felt his heart, so warm only a moment ago, freeze into a solid block of ice. When Moran returned to the kitchen, Chuaning was sitting at the table next to the window as before, with one foot on the bench and the other dangling off, an arm propped casually on the windowsill. When he heard Moran's movement, he turned his head a little and sent a glance at Moran. Here, I found a firefox fur blanket. Bundle up, it's cold at night. Chuaning didn't reply. Moran walked over and handed him the blanket, but Chuaning didn't take it. He only shook his head and slowly closed his eyes as if resting. What's wrong, you don't like it? Still no reply. I'll go see if there's a different one then, Moran said with a smile as he ruffled Chuaning's hair. But when he turned to go look for another blanket, he realized that the clay jar was no longer on the table. He stared in confusion. Where'd my soup go? Who said it was yours? Chuaning finally spoke, his voice wintry. It's mine. The corner of Moran's lips twitched. He figured that the kid was throwing a tantrum. Okie dokie, yours then. Where did your soup go? I threw it away, Chuaning said flatly. Threw? Chuaning went back to ignoring him. He hopped lightly off the bench and opened the door to leave. Hey, Shidi, where are you going? Moran forgot all about the blanket. The killer was still at large. It wasn't safe out there, and hastily chased after him. He spied the small clay jar under the peach blossom tree. It hadn't been thrown out after all. Moran let out a breath. This was his own fault to start with. His little Shidi had probably been trying to hold in his resentment earlier, but then had been unable to hold it in any longer and let it out despite himself. And he had every right to do so. So Moran walked over and sat down next to Chuaning, who had seated himself under the peach blossom tree. Ignoring Moran, Chuaning grabbed the little clay jar, opened the lid, took out a ladle bigger than his face, and tried to reach in. But the ladle wouldn't fit, and he threw it aside in a fit of anger. The ladle struck the ground with a crack and broke into pieces, and the boy sat there holding the jar in a daze. Just drink right out of it, Moran suggested, his head turned sideways and cheek propped up. It's just the 2 of us here anyway. No need to be embarrassed. Chuaning did not deign to respond. No, I'm going to drink it if you don't. It's the first time my Shidi has made soup for me. I'm not going to let it go to waste, Moran teased as he reached for the jar with a grin. To his surprise, Chu Wanning slapped his hand away. Get lost. Dumbstruck, Moran blinked. This exchange left him with a bit of deja vu. Then he scooted back over with a grin on his thick face. Shidi, I was wrong. Please don't be mad anymore. I was gonna go pick you up hours ago, but your Mingjing Shishiang suddenly fell ill, so I was delayed. I didn't mean to leave you waiting. Chu Wanning kept his head down and said nothing. No, really, I was so busy the whole time and I haven't eaten yet. I'm starving. Moran tugged on his sleeve pitifully. Shidi, my kind Shidi, my good Shidi, please. May Shishiang have some soup? The tyrant of humanity, Taishanjun. Chu Wanning continued to say nothing, but he eventually moved to place the jar of soup on the ground. He lifted his head a little and tilted it to the side a bit before turning away again, meaning for Moran to help himself if he wanted. Moran grinned. Thanks, Shidi. The little clay jar was stuffed full. A single glance and Moran could tell that his Shidi hadn't eaten much, leaving him the majority of the meat. It was actually mostly meat, with a little bit of soup. Moran stared for a bit, eyes lit with amusement. Are you sure this is soup? He teased gently. Looks more like chicken stew to me. Shidi is so generous. Still no response. Moran stopped chattering then. After spending half the day taking care of Shimei, he really was starving. Besides, his Shidi had worked so hard to make the soup, he couldn't possibly let the kid's good intentions go to waste. He broke off 2 small branches from the peach tree, smoothing them into a pair of chopsticks with a flare of spiritual energy from his fingertips, and got right down to stuffing a piece of chicken in his mouth. Whoa, delicious, Moran said around a mouthful of steamy chicken. It's really good. My Shidi is so capable. In truth, it wasn't that good, and it was a bit salty too, but Moran still dug in heartily to make his little Shidi happy, plowing through most of the chicken in short order. The entire time, Chu Wanning sat there quietly without looking at him. Moran gulped down a big mouthful of soup. It was even saltier than the meat, so much so that it was practically bitter, but it was still bearable. He scooped up another drumstick and was about to shove it in his mouth when he froze. How many legs does a chicken have? Of course, there was no reply, so he answered himself. 2. Moran looked at the drumstick held between his chopsticks, then looked at the bone from the other drumstick that he had eaten. After a long moment of silence, the idiot finally lifted his head, dazed, and asked Chu Wanning, Shidi, were you... He didn't have the courage to say the rest. Were you waiting for me this whole time, and so haven't eaten yet? The jar of soup is all meat. Is it because you waited for me for so long that all the soup boiled off, and there was only meat left, so that's all that was left to put in the jar? Only to have me think that you'd already eaten, and just left some for me, that you'd cooked it wrong and turned chicken soup into chicken stew. Moran put the clay jar down wordlessly. He had realized too late there was hardly any meat left. But at least he clued in, and fairly quickly. We're not talking, and then he was trying to go to sleep later that night and then sat up and realized that obviously this was kind of an astute observation to have in the moment. Chu Wanning finally spoke. His voice was still calm and even, with a bit of youthfulness. You said you would be back for dinner, so I waited, he said slowly, tonelessly. If you don't want it anymore, then at least send word so I'm not waiting like an idiot, okay? Shidi. Chu Wanning was still facing away, refusing to look at him. Moran couldn't see his expression. Have someone pass me a message that you're going to go keep Mingjing Shishiang company instead. Would it have been that hard? Moran could not reply. You took my jar and rambled so much before eating, but you didn't even ask if I'd eaten yet. Would that have been so hard? Moran had no reply. Would it have been so hard to check and see how many drumsticks were in the jar first? That last one sounded a little funny. Even through all his remorse, Moran could only smile, but his dimples froze before they had even formed. His little Shidi was crying. You know, when you truly hold no self-worth, or maybe scraps of self-worth, at best, And then you kind of get a glimmer that of like external, that like maybe someone will care about you and care for you, and then they fail you. It does sting more than your average person. Chu Wanning never would have cried over such a minor thing in his adult form. No one had realized, oh God, I just realized you could write a whole essay about this arc and your inner child. Oh. No one had realized that, although being turned into a child by the willow sap hadn't affected his mind that much, there had been some impact after all. His temperament became more childish whenever he was tired or overexerted himself. This hidden property of the sap was extremely difficult to detect, so neither Madame Wong nor the Tenlong Elder had noticed it when taking his pulse. I also feel hunger and sadness. I am human too. Even with that younger mentality in the foreground of his mind, Chu Wanning still clung to his self-restraint, fighting back sobs without a sound, but his shoulders shook uncontrollably as tears welled and fell from his reddened eyes. All those years, the Yuheng Elder had always endured silently. No one liked him, no one kept him company, and he always feigned nonchalance as he walked through the reverent crowd, lofty and composed. Only with his mind tinged by childish thoughts could he break down and speak the truth, let out the misery that had built up within him for so long. It wasn't that he didn't care for those around him, only that he did it quietly. Such quietude, day after day, without anyone to see or notice, was also a kind of torment. And this is why you figure out a way to express your feelings. For a variety of reasons, many that benefit you, but also, like, if you care about someone and they don't know that, that doesn't, or you can't communicate that in, like, a healthy way, that doesn't, it's not like it doesn't matter, but like it doesn't affect nearly anything. That it counts, but it's not helping or enriching the other person like at all. It needs to be communicated when you care about someone. Not that the people who do so quietly, like they're so beautiful. This actually just, made me fall in love with Chu Wanning just that little bit much more, because the people who are more internal with their feelings and their care and they're not terribly demonstrative, we love them. We love that for them. You can communicate your love, care, and affection in a multitude of ways. To find a way that you're comfortable with makes you emotionally healthier. It lets other people feel loved, which is the important part. If they're not feeling loved, that's it's a whole thing. I'm not going to climb on the soapbox. I'm really not, I promise. I'm physically restraining myself as we speak. As Moran watched as Moran watched the minute shivering of his little Shidi's shoulders, his heart clenched, and he reached out to soothe him. His hand was slapped away before it made contact. Shidi, don't touch me. Chu Wanning always put up a strong front, regardless of his age. He firmly wiped away his tears and stood. I'm going to bed. You can go keep your Shidi company. Just stay away from me. There was an awkward moment of silence. In Chu Wanning's indignation, he had forgotten that Shimei was older than Moran. Moran opened his mouth to say something, but Chu Wanning had left. He disappeared into the other bedroom, and the door slammed shut with a loud bang. There were only 2 bedrooms in the courtyard of Camps's pavilion. Moran had been planning to let Shimei sleep in one while he squeezed into the other with his little Shidi, but it looked like his Shidi's room was out of the question, given how he was so mad he'd even locked the door. Moran didn't want to climb into bed with Shimei either. Not to mention, having been scolded by his little Shidi and even made him cry, Moran's head was a complete mess. He wasn't in any mood to think about any kind of flirting. So he simply sat there in the courtyard in a daze, surrounded by peach blossoms in full bloom, holding the clay jar that his little Shidi had brought him all the way from the cave. A long while later, he sighed and slapped himself across the face, cursing in a low voice, "You good for nothing." I can confirm that making a child cry, in literally any context, makes you feel shitty, let alone one like this, where it's so, like, directly your fault and you directly, like, hurt a little kid's genuine feelings. I have made an 11-year-old cry for purely D&D reasons. I DM for a D&D group for the wife and then 3 friends of mine, and one of those friends is an 11-year-old boy, and we had a character at the table die, and he cried. Everybody cried, but he cried. And I now have the experience of having made a child cry. And it's not great, even when it's in a purely fictional context. Not great. Doesn't feel great. Not great. Not at all. No. And so Moran spent the night with the earth as his bed and the sky as his blanket, lying on the ground covered in fallen peach blossom petals, staring blankly at the sky. His little Shidi, Shimei, Shizun, Shuimeng, the fake Go-Chen from Jincheng Lake, the unknown killer, Chushun and his son in the illusion. A series of hazy figures flashed through Moran's mind. He vaguely felt like something was off, but the feeling was so faint that it disappeared before he really noticed. Peach blossoms bloomed splendidly, their petals drifting gently down. Moran caught a fallen blossom in his hand, holding the perished flower up against the moonlight. He recalled the final moments of his previous life, when he had laid himself down in the coffin he had prepared ahead of time. That day, the sky had also been adrift with fallen blossoms, soundless and fragrant. Only the blossoms back then had been from a haitang tree. Haitang. The person he liked, in this life and the last, was Shimei, but for some reason, moments before death, he had chosen to bury himself under the haitang tree in front of the heaven-piercing tower where he had first met Chu Wanning. Don't throw the book across the room. Don't throw the book across the room. Don't throw the book across the room. You need it. You need it. You need it. You're doing a reading in front of people. You need the book. You can't go up and get the book. Don't throw the book across the room. Don't do it. Many of the things Moran had done in his past life now frightened him to think about. The more time passed since his rebirth, the less he understood why he had been so cruel. Slaughtering entire cities, oppressing the weak, killing his master, even forcing Chu Wanning to do things like that with him. Moran tossed the peach blossom away and laid his hand across his forehead, then slowly closed his eyes. The words his little Shidi had said earlier, "I also feel hunger and sadness, I'm human too," circled in his mind. The one who had said it had been his little Shidi, but for an instant, Moran saw the silhouette of another person, a person dressed in snow-white robes. Then he blinked, and the white robes became red wedding robes that dragged on the ground. It was just the way they had looked on that man during the ceremony in the ghost mistress's illusion. I'm human too. I also feel sorrow and pain, Moran. I also feel pain. A suffocating pressure suddenly filled Moran's heart, as if something was trying to burst out. A sheen of cold sweat covered his forehead. He squeezed his eyes shut, drawing labored breaths, and murmured, "I'm sorry." He didn't know to whom he was apologizing, to his little Shidi, or to that person in wedding robes. Inside his bedroom, Shimei sat up. Padding quietly over to the window without turning on the light, he looked through the gap in the shutters. He gazed from afar at Moran, lying amongst the fallen petals with an arm wrapped around that clay jar, his own eyes dark and his thoughts unknowable. Early the next morning, Moran wrinkled his nose where he lay in the flowers and grass, inhaled a deep breath of fresh air, and stretched lazily before getting up. He only got halfway through the stretch when a shriek shattered the peace at Camps's pavilion. Moran's eyes flew open as he rolled to his feet. The sight before him made his blood run cold, and all he could do was stare in shock. Each and every one of the 15 feathered tribe elites assigned to guard Camps's pavilion had been murdered overnight, and in the exact same manner as 18, a willow vine glowing brightly scarlet and wrapped around each of their necks. Jengui. What? People are just dropping like flies? How fucking many? How many people? What page am I on? What's happening? Hang on, 1 second. Every one of the 15. That brings the body count to 16 overnight. Also, how do you do something like that without waking anybody up? Or just somebody shooting off a scream or anything like that? How do you do that? Now I'm like reasonably certain this is some fake Gochen bullshit. It's gotta be, right? If he can pull the bullshit like the chest formation, you know, it's gotta be something like that. The suspect list just really narrowed down. All of them dangled amidst the grove of peach trees in full bloom, their crimson sleeves drifting in the breeze and long skirts reaching to the ground. Their bodies swayed in time with the wind like so many preserved flowers, eerie yet uncannily beautiful. The one who had screamed was a low-ranking member of the feathered tribe who had come to deliver breakfast. She trembled in fright, the bamboo basket she'd held now lying on the ground, congee and pastries spilled everywhere. She trembled even more violently upon seeing Moran standing in the courtyard and reached behind her for something. Moran stepped forward without thinking. No, wait, it's not what... It was too late. She had activated the seal of imminent crisis tattooed on her lower back. The seal functioned as an urgent summons to the feathered tribe, and in an instant, the people of the feathered tribe across Peach Blossom Springs sprouted fiery wings and descended upon Camps's pavilion. They were stunned by the sight that greeted them. Okay. Now I think I sound a little bit less conspiracy theorist when I say that now it kind of feels like we're supposed to be raising an eyebrow about Shimei. Because just randomly hopping over into his POV a little bit, to have him looking out at Moran, who's laying in the courtyard that will soon then be populated by 15 dead bodies, that, to me, and my decidedly Western eyes, is like, that should be suspicious. Like, fully canonically suspicious. They want me to be like, what the fuck was that? You know? Adieu. Adieu. After the initial shocked silence, they erupted in screams and wails. The commotion drew cultivators as well. In an instant, shock and suspicion, anger and grief surrounded Camps's pavilion. Moran, what defense could you possibly have at this point? Murderer, lunatic! The gathered people of the feathered tribe were beyond furious as they screamed and cried, he has to pay with his life, kill him, kill him! It would have been a struggle for Moran to defend himself, even if he had 100 mouths to argue, and he had only the one. If I really was the killer, and I could kill all of them this easily, then why would I stay? To wait and get caught? That's actually a pretty valid argument. You shut up, spat a feathered tribe member with flame-red hair and a tear-stained face. You've already gone this far, and you still dare to... If you're not the killer, then why was everyone but you killed? Someone else snarled. That's right, deceitful and treacherous. Even if you aren't the killer, he's absolutely related to you. Why else would he not kill you, huh? Blood for blood. Moran was so mad that he wanted to laugh. He had slaughtered with wanton abandon in his past life, and hardly anyone had ever dared to say something like blood for blood to him. Yet now, when he wasn't actually the killer, he was being accused to the high heavens. This world was truly... He closed his eyes for a moment and was about to say something when a crimson light shot through the sky. The elder immortal of the feathered tribe descended lightly from a cloud and calm down. One word at a time. The elder immortal of the feathered tribe descended lightly from a cloud and coldly scanned her surroundings, her expression exceedingly dark. Moeyu. Elder immortal. The elder immortal stared him down for a while, then walked over to one of the corpses and lifted the blood-stained willow vine wrapped around its neck. Where is your weapon? Take it out and show me. Moran was silent. Are you refusing? Moran let out a sigh. His weapon was Jangui. A large number of people had already seen it during training, and a bunch more had seen it at the site of 18's murder. If he were to take it out now, it would be compared with the willow vines around the necks of the murdered guards, and doubtless it would be used to implicate him. But if he refused, it would look like he had a guilty conscience. A scarlet blaze appeared with a whoosh in his palm as Jangui took form, coursing with a fiery, crackling flare. Feel free to look, Elder Immortal. That's the end of that chapter. We're on page 331 for chapter 75, which is called This Venerable One is Illiterate. Deal with it. Let me double check real quick how long this chapter is. Oh, it's like technically under 10 pages. All right. Before we take the break. The gathered crowd gawked at Jiangui, then looked at the blazing red willow vines wrapped around the necks of the murdered and grew even more agitated. You did it, just like when you killed 18. How could you be so cruel? Kill him! The clamor hurt the elder immortal's head. With a hand pressed against her temple, she said coldly, Moeyu, I will ask you one last time. Did you, or did you not, kill them? I did not. Very well, the elder immortal nodded. Moran let out a breath, thinking she was going to let him go. He was about to express his gratitude for her wisdom and righteousness when she lifted a hand in a gesture of indifference. This person has committed myriad transgressions and refuses to admit his crimes, she said in an icy tone. Seize him. When Shimei came outside after washing up and getting dressed, he saw Moran being restrained with magic by over a dozen high-level members of the feathered tribe, while another tied his wrists with a mortal binding rope. What are you doing? All color drained out of Shimei's face as he hurried to Moran's side. What happened? No one replied, but the corpses swaying eerily between the peach blossoms were answer enough. Shimei drew in a sharp breath and took a step back, bumping into Moran's chest. Aran! Don't panic. Calm down. Moran kept his eyes on the elder immortal while whispering to Shimei. Go get Uncle and the Xuanji elder. With the situation being what it was, the feathered tribe might not be open to reason. If they decided to rip him apart no matter what he said, he had zero chance of winning, not with his current abilities. He needed Shui Jingyong and Xuanji to step in as soon as possible. Shimei left, and Moran stood alone against those faces twisted by rage, his gaze steady as he glanced them over one by one. A gob of phlegm flew out of the crowd toward him. Moran moved to dodge, but the feathered folk who had spit was too close, and it caught him anyway. He turned around slowly and came face to face with a pair of scarlet eyes. You killed so many people, and you dare to call for help. I'm going to put you down right now. With that, a fiery blaze gathered in the feathered tribe folk's palm and hurtled directly toward Moran. Moran stepped back and to the side. The scorching fire singed his bangs as it shot past and crashed into the peach tree behind him, snapping the sturdy trunk in half. The peach tree fell over, flowers scattering across the ground like snow in the wind. Moran looked at the tree on the ground, then turned to the attacker. I already said I didn't kill him. The purity pills will be ready in 10 days. If you want revenge, you could at least wait till then. 10 days. You'll have murdered everyone here by then. His attacker roared furiously and lunged at Moran. Give me back my Zizi! Moran dodged the attack once again, and his eyes landed on the elder immortal looking on from the side. She had no intention whatsoever of stopping this. Moran felt a flare of rage and raised his voice in a bellow. "Hey, you old bird, get a grip on your people!" No response. Fucker. Moran cursed under his breath when she still refused to budge, pretending to be deaf-mute at this juncture. "You want to watch me get burned to death or something? If I'd known you shitty birds couldn't even tell right from wrong, I wouldn't have come to this shithole to start with. Who wants to get incriminated like this for no reason?" We started to get angry. The elder immortal's expression twitched slightly, and there was a fierce thwop as she lifted her sleeve in a sweeping flourish that landed right on Moran's face. The feathered tribe looked like humans, but their way of thinking was quite alien. In the cultivation world, not even the head of a small martial hall, much less the leader of an entire tribe, would jump to conclusions without definitive proof. But in the end, the feathered tribe was half beast, and their blood ran thick with their bestial nature. It's true. Both sides are kind of right, and both sides are kind of wrong right now. Like, on one hand, the circumstantial evidence, pretty fantastic. How could somebody kill 15 people with Moran, like, right there, and nothing? Moran didn't see anything. Moran didn't hear anything. Like, nothing. It just happened. That is deeply suspicious. However, this whole guilty until proven innocent thing is pretty bullshit. Like, what? Are these feathered tribe people from, like, Stan Twitter? They have a real, well, it looks guilty, so we'll treat them as, that's not how that works. Meanwhile, Moran has a right to be a little pissed at the moment. However, he also, the suspicion is understandable. The condemnation is not, but the suspicion is understandable. Where even? Where even? There are only so many options on 2 pages. The color of the elder immortal's hair changed from black to bright scarlet, and what looked like steam rolled from every strand. Her eyes opened wide in a glare as she said darkly, "Who is your master? Who taught such an uncouth disciple? Watch your mouth." At her words, the rest of the feathered tribe began to shriek, one after another, and closed in on Moran with murder written in their crimson eyes. An arrow of flame pierced through the sky, flying directly toward Moran's heart. Moran dared not dismiss the threat, and sparks coursed through Jiangui as he dodged while brandishing the willow vine. The shot was only a feint, and when he turned to block, one of the feathered tribe, bereaved, rushed his back with sword drawn. Arrow at the fore, sword at the rear, there was no way out. These half-beasts meant to kill him right here. Moran steeled himself, called to mind how Chu Wanning had wielded Tianwen before, and raised his hand with a flick of his wrist. Jiangui was flung into the air, then abruptly pulled taut, the blood-red willow vine whirling into a blur and creating a massive vortex. The leaves on the vine instantly turned knife-sharp as the maelstrom pulled in everything in his vicinity, even the air itself, and shredded it all to pieces. It was one of Chu Wanning's ultimate techniques. Wind. With his vine as the eye of the storm, everything surrounding Moran was pulled in by powerful spiritual energy, swallowed by the vortex, ground into dust, and swept away by the wind until nothing remained. The attacker screamed. Her arrow had been pulverized by Jiangui, and her longsword was lost in the storm as well, too close to rescue. There came the sharp sound of metal breaking, and before anyone could react, she had also been pulled to the edge of the blood-red storm as she shrieked, "Let me go, you lunatic, you fucking lunatic!" The elder immortal was infuriated by the sight of her own people endangered. Her red robes fluttered as she rose into the air. A brilliantly red crystal of high purity appeared in her hand, and her sleeves billowed as she channeled spiritual energy into it. A frenzied gale roared to life, sweeping clouds along and flattening grass and trees alike. The image of a fire phoenix blazed into being behind her. Her eyes were a deep, unsettling red, and that originally beautiful face twisted. Bastard, she hissed, still not standing down. You've called out your phoenix. If I stopped now, wouldn't that just be asking for death? As Moran spoke, the phoenix cast a massive shadow over him, its fiery reflection dancing across his face. You stop first, then I will. You. The elder immortal rose even higher into the air. Have. Her blood-red eyes stared Moran down as she spit out each syllable. No right to make demands of me. An explosive sound came from above. Then the phoenix dove toward Moran with a screech. Another deafening sound, louder than the last, like the awakening of an ancient dragon from its 1,000 years of slumber as it smashed through stone and earth to burst forth from the depths of the ground. The phoenix was met by a golden light, and the force of the impact sent shockwaves through the air. The weaker members of the feathered tribe shrieked as the gales bashed into them. Some even spat blood as they were thrown dozens of feet away. The tempest swept through Camps's pavilion, instantly obliterating trees and buildings until they were leveled to the ground. When the dust settled, a slender, familiar figure was in the air in front of Moran, shielding him. Shizun! He used, like, one of the, I forget exactly what it was, but this man, of course he would, used one of his get-out-of-jail-free cards, albeit temporarily, in order to, yeah. We're going to do this properly. Robes white as snow, sleeves billowing in the wind. When he heard Moran's call, his face turned slightly, his expression as cool and composed as ever, and his phoenix eyes swept over Moran where he knelt on the ground. Chuanning's voice was cold and deep, like clear water from the well on a hot summer's day. Literally a tall drink of water, okay. Are you injured? Moran was too stunned to react. His eyes were wide and his mouth opened in shock as he gaped wordlessly. Chuaning looked him up and down and detected no obvious injuries. So he turned back to the elder immortal. Weren't you asking who his master was a moment ago? He released his terrifyingly potent spiritual energy and slowly descended to the ground, where he said, simply and sharply, with not a single superfluous word, Chuaning of Xisheng Peak, show me your best move. He didn't have to be hot about it, okay? He didn't have to be... He didn't have... that was excessive. What? Chuaning frowned. It looked like these bird people didn't understand etiquette. That was fine by him. He was out of patience. I said, I am his master. A pause. And I don't remember giving you permission to hurt my disciple. The elder immortal might have been called an immortal, but this was only on account of her noble bloodline. She was far from an actual immortal. In their exchange moments ago, Chuaning had shattered her phoenix and Tianyuan had slashed her arm. She wore a sour expression as she held her limb, black blood seeping from between her fingers. How dare you, a mere mortal? Who let you into Peach Blossom Springs? How did you even get in here? She was almost crazed. You conceited. Tianyuan appeared, as summoned, and lashed straight across her face, splitting the corner of her lips and spilling blood. Yes, go on. I'm really getting exposed. Chuaning said with a cold smile as he smoothed down his sleeve, which had fallen slightly askew while he brandished Tianyuan. Then he grabbed Moran by the collar and dragged him upright with one hand, eyes never once leaving the elder immortal. You were saying? I'm a conceited what? How dare you? Why wouldn't I dare? Chu Wanning gazed at her, unimpressed. What ought I be afraid of? He paused, then pulled Moran closer. Red to filth. Listen up. This person is mine. I'm taking him. Don't perceive me right now, okay? Don't. Moran hadn't even recovered from his shock at Chu Wanning's sudden godlike descent before he was smashed into smithereens by the words, "This person is mine." Shizun. Shut your trap. Chu Wanning's face was as impassive as ever, but Moran could clearly see the anger simmering in his eyes. All you ever do is bring me trouble. Can't do anything right. We got so close. But it's also only volume 2. Like, if they really turned a corner, what the hell would we do for another 9 volumes? This scold was punctuated by a slap to the back of the head. Then Chu Wanning took off into the air with Moran in tow, and he was dozens of feet away in a single leap. By the time Moran realized what was happening, they were at the barren outskirts of Peach Blossom Springs. Shizun, my Shidi is still back there. Chu Wanning glanced at him and let out a cold humph at the panic on his face. Shidi, the one named Shia, you know, the one that you abandoned overnight in the cave after you said you were going to be there, and then he made dinner for you, and then it went cold, and it all, like, the meat all sucked up and everything, and you didn't even ask if he had eaten anything? That one, who you just treated like shit? Gee, I wonder if Chu Wanning is going to have anything really fantastic to say about that. Yes, he's still at Campus Pavilion. I have to go save him. Chu Wanning lifted a hand to interrupt. I already sent him to Xuanji with the spell. There's no need to worry. That's gracious of him. I was so dead-ass certain that Chu Wanning was about to be like, oh, you care? You care about him? Like, you give a shit? He's crossed your mind? You thought of him? And how you need to go, like, take care of him, protect him? That you thought of that? Okay. Moran finally let out a breath he was holding and lifted his eyes to look at Chu Wanning. Shizun, why are you here? Chu Wanning had been woken by the commotion outside his room, and when he saw that the situation was dire, he'd quickly taken one of Tanlong's pills to temporarily regain his adult form. He couldn't explain that to Moran right now, so he only said, icy as ever, why can't I be here? Then he lifted a hand and manifested a golden high tongue on the tip of his finger. Withered blooms outside the wistful tower. Night and spring breeze down the Chantong River. Chu Wanning lowered his lashes and blew gently on the flower bud, which instantly bloomed with a flourish of resplendent light. He flicked his slender fingertip and gave it a quiet command. Seek. The high-tongue flower drifted away with the wind and disappeared into the forest. Shizun, what spell was that? Moran asked curiously. Flower toss. Huh? Flower toss. Chu Wanning's expression was totally serious, without the slightest hint of humor. It didn't have a name, but since you asked, I've given it one. Moran's mouth hung open. This guy could not possibly be this lazy. The sect leader already told me what happened. Chu Wanning gazed in the direction where the high tongue had gone, voice deep and cold as always, like jade in the flow of a stream. The person responsible for these events is likely also responsible for the incident at Jincheng Lake. I'm afraid that the Zhenlong chess formation has been performed here at the Peach Blossom Springs as well. Yup. Thank you. Moran was startled. How could that be? He'd excelled at the Genlong chess formation in his previous lifetime, and when 18 was killed, he had checked for signs of its use. This forbidden technique was always accompanied by the stench of blood. Once unleashed, murder was inevitable. So one only had to look for intense, yet seemingly unfounded resentful energy to determine whether the Genlong chess formation had been deployed in the vicinity. If this mysterious person had indeed used that forbidden technique again, he would have had to pull it off perfectly. Otherwise, Moran would have been able to detect it. There was a tinge of suspicion in the look Chu Wan-ning threw him, and Moran hurried to explain himself. I mean, they're all half immortal at Peach Blossom Springs. How could they miss a forbidden technique being used there? Chu Wan-ning shook his head. This person had already proved themselves capable of controlling the ancient spirit beasts of Jincheng Lake. Although spirit beasts can't hope to compare to holy beasts in terms of strength, they are equivalent. Ooh, they are equivalent to demi-immortals. I have never seen the word equivalent before in my life, but that is amazing. I'm writing it down. Equivalent. Either that is like literally a wild typo somehow instead of equivalent, or that's like a brand new word for me to hear. Oh, wow. And they have not done a typo even remotely that serious so far. So I'm inclined to think that it's just a word that I have not encountered. As he was able to control Jincheng Lake, he is very likely doing the same at Peach Blossom Springs right now. I see. Moran lifted his head, the bashful grin on his face framed with dimples. Shizun, what does equivalent mean? Chu Wan-ning gave him a look. It wasn't like he was dumb, guys. Come on. That was the end of the chapter. We're on page 341 for chapter 76, which is called This Venerable One Meets That Guy Again. So we're going to take a break really quick. I actually haven't drank that much, so I am just going to run to the bathroom real fast, and then we will come back. This is your time to go grab some tea, go to the bathroom, go do what have you, grab a snack, whatever you want to do. And when we come back, we will get into the second half, third of the rest of the stream. Be back in a minute. Hello again. We are back once I can get my face out of my screen, off of my screen. We are on page 341 for chapter 76, which is called This Venerable One Meets That Guy Again. Yeah, that guy, that one guy that we're kind of acquaintances with, that guy. He's just that guy. Chu Wanning had never been the kindly teacher type, and neither was Moran, a 5-year-old, at his first lesson. A hammy question like this didn't warrant a response, so Chu Wanning, lashes lowered, ignored it. The high-tongued flower that he had sent off with a speed-boosting wind spell quickly scouted the entirety of Peach Blossom Springs. Mere moments later, a golden amulet drifted down from the sky into his hand. The ancestral abyss? They went to the ancestral abyss every day to pluck feathers from the frenzied owls that roosted there. The feathered tribe said that the bottom of the abyss was filled with roaring flames, and that anyone who slipped and fell there, other than the demon owls who had lived there since ancient times, would be melted into nothingness. Chu Wanning cast a concealment barrier on himself and Moran to avoid detection by the feathered tribe. When they arrived at the ancestral abyss, they looked down. There was an eerie red light and no bottom to be seen, but thousands of owls were perched along the walls of the steep cliffs. The birds were asleep, their heads tucked into their wings, and they were packed so densely that from this distance they looked like countless dots on the cliffside. According to Chu Wanning's hypothesis, if the Zhenlong chess formation had indeed been cast within the abyss, then all this talk of fierce flames and being burned until not even ashes remained was likely a fabrication. How can we be sure that the fire down there isn't actually dangerous? Moran stared at the uncanny light below as he murmured, "Looks real enough to me. Throw something in first. I'll go grab a rabbit." Or literally anything? You got a tree branch, we immediately go to mammals? He's not entirely redeemed yet. No need. Chu Wanning leapt up with a flutter of his pristine robes and disappeared into the forest of peach trees nearby. A moment later, he... I'm sorry. Woo! Oh, just sometimes I just say it and it happens sometimes. Chu Wanning leapt up with a flutter of his pristine robes and disappeared into the forest of peach trees nearby. A moment later, he fluttered back like an immortal exiled from the ninth heaven, a branch of peach blossoms in hand. Moran understood. Peach blossoms were even more fragile than rabbits, so if the peach blossoms could handle the supposed fierce flames, then there could be no doubt that the fire posed no danger to people. Chu Wanning ran a finger lightly down the branch as he mouthed the spell, covering it with a soft layer of translucent blue light. He pointed toward the abyss and said, "Go on." The peach blossom floated gently down. 1 foot, 2 feet, 10 feet, 100. Though the branch was too far away to see, the spell Chu Wanning had cast allowed him to sense the condition of the flowers. He waited with eyes closed for a good while before opening them. "The flowers are fine. Let's go." Fucking illusion bullshit. Jeez. If Chu Wanning was certain, there was no need to say anything else. Moran leapt into the ancestral abyss alongside him. Both of them were proficient in martial arts, and they nimbly arrived at the bottom with ease. When Moran laid eyes on the scene below, a shiver ran down his spine, even though he had mentally prepared himself. He now knew the nature of the eerie red light. God, do I want to know? Maybe I don't want to know. Thousands of crosses stood at the bottom of the abyss. To every one was bound a member of the feathered tribe, entirely naked and drenched in blood. Within each of their mouths was stuffed a lychee fruit. That comes with a footnote. Lychee, also known as slow slicing or death by 1,000 cuts, is a form of punishment in which pieces of a person are sliced away until they die. I said I didn't want to know. And these were what emitted that piercing red light. From above, the collective blaze of these thousands of fruits had easily been mistaken for flames burning deep within the abyss. Chuaning's face was terrible. Well learned as he was, he recognized this red fruit as a forbidden object. The very mention of it would make any person in the cultivation world pale. Placing this fruit into the mouth of a person on the verge of death extended their last moment into 365 days. In other words, the victim would be denied release and instead be forced to suffer an excruciatingly slow death. The instant cessation of their heart would be stretched into an unending torment, thus the name Ling Chi. As Moran stared at the throngs of feathered tribefolk living in death, dense as a forest, he murmured, "Soul-locking array. If an individual were to use still living humans as pillars in this array, they could confine resentful energy within their victims and thereby prevent that energy from leaking out. They could even conceal the energy of thousands of souls trapped within a gen-long chess formation. No wonder Moran hadn't sensed the slightest bit of resentful energy, which would have indicated the presence of the technique." Oh, great, there's art. We needed art for this. Moran could only shudder. Was the fake Go Chen from Jinchang Lake truly the person who had orchestrated the events at Peach Blossom Springs? Everything they'd seen at Jinchang Lake had seemed like the work of someone who only knew the fundamental basics of the Genlong chess formation, just enough to control the creatures of the lake. This time, while the feathered tribe of Peach Blossom Springs had been a bit dumb and emotionally stunted, they had been nigh indiscernibly different from their original selves. They had even been capable of using the unique magic of the feathered tribe. It was clear that the perpetrator's grasp of the forbidden technique was now at least comfortably adept. Could the fake Go Chen truly have become this proficient so quickly? Have I already floated the possibility that when Shimei died, Chuaning knew that Shimei was like heinously evil and therefore did nothing? Have I floated that concept? Because if I haven't, then I'm doing it right now. Literally apropos of nothing. Entirely out of red field. Left field. Could the Fake Chen truly have become this proficient so quickly? Chu Wanning walked into the center of the soul-locking array, where stood a crystal pillar. A member of the feathered tribe was bound to this pillar as well, only she was dead. The Ling Chi fruit in her mouth had long since withered, and her body was in the beginning stages of decomposition. However, her identity was made clear by the yellow robes she wore, which were embroidered in golden thread with a phoenix, as well as by the star-shaped mark between her brows. This is... Moran startled. That's the real Elder Immortal. Oh no! I hadn't gotten there. Oh, shit! I hadn't fucking gotten there! Oh, no. We're in danger. Oh, no. Oh no, feels like a real 8-year-old response to this, but like, oh no! Correct. Chu Wanning looked at the forest of human pillars stretching out as far as the eye could see. So many of the feathered tribe were captured to use in the soul-locking array, he said quietly. At least 800, if not 1,000. The elder immortal certainly wouldn't have tolerated this were she still alive. I thought it was odd earlier when I exchanged blows with her outside the pavilion that she didn't even seem to be as strong as the ghost mistress of Butterfly Town. If I'm not wrong, it seems that the feathered tribe of Peach Blossom Springs has been exterminated, and all those we met were merely walking corpses under the control of Zhenlong chess formation. I am not going to trust anything ever again. Every time, this is just going to be how it is. Every time we get to a new town, a new village, a new city, a new settlement, we could sit down with somebody around a campfire, and I'm going to be like, they're all fucking dead, and it's the Zhenlong chess formation. It's this fucking fake Go Chen guy. She has, like, permanently broken my sense of trust in literally anything. Volume 2 of 11. Moran stared in shock. Sure enough, Chu Wanning had come to the same conclusion that he had. As soon as Moran recovered from his shock, he turned to leave, but Chu Wanning blocked his path with a wave of his sleeve. "Where are you going?" Chu Wanning asked. "I have to go tell Uncle and the others. If this is the case, then this place is terribly dangerous." "Don't be too hasty," Chu Wanning shook his head. "Right now, we're out in the open, but the enemy is hidden in the shadows. There are many cultivators at Peach Blossom Springs, and we don't know who's pulling the strings. Acting rashly might make things worse." "Long time no see. Hang on. Running into this word again. Zongsha. That's not... Chu Zongsha. Why was that a moment? Chu Zongsha is still so cautious." A small giggle came from above them, but the effect of the sound was no different from that of thunder striking the depths of the ancestral abyss. Their heads snapped up as blood drained from their faces, only to see a mangled child of the feathered tribe, sitting on a branch, sticking out from the cliffside, kicking his legs. The dead child tilted his head, a pair of eyeballs soaked in bloody tears rolling around in their sockets, and grinned brightly at them. "Zhenlong chess formation," Moran said, startled. Chu Wanning cursed under his breath. "Another white chess piece." "That's right, another white chess piece," the child clapped gleefully, terrifyingly. "What, did you think I would come here personally? I'm not dumb." "What do you mean?" Sorry, I had to get that out. It wasn't like he was dumb. "So you are that fake Go Chen from Jincheng Lake," Moran said. "What do you want, you madman?" "Who do you think you are? Same no-name sproutling still fumbling over foundations. You aren't fit to speak to me. Tell your master to do the asking himself." "You..." Chu Wanning's slender fingers emerged from his wide sleeve with a sweep to hold back Moran, who was so pissed that smoke practically rose from his head. With a lift of his eyelashes, Chu Wanning looked up and asked coldly, "What are you trying to accomplish?" The child continued to kick his legs. He was noticeably already dead, but under the control of the forbidden technique, he moved non-stop, making all kinds of gestures like a puppet on a string. "Oh, nothing much, really." Chu Wanning's voice dropped several degrees in temperature. "Then why do you keep coming after my disciple?" "I'm not planning anything too important. I just so happen to need your little disciple's spiritual core to do it," the child said, beaming. "He has only himself to blame for having such a fine core. It's even better than yours, and by far. I noticed back at Jincheng Lake that he's a superb spiritual essence of wood. If not for that, I might have been more interested in you, Chu Zongshe." Moran was about to gag. The child spoke in a young voice, but greasily and with such an adult tone. "If I'm ever so goddamn unlucky as to get caught by you, I'll immediately self-destruct my fucking core," he snapped. "So don't even think about touching me." It's not like I want to touch you, the child continued in that infuriatingly honey-sweet tone. I'm only chasing you around because I have to. All men love beauties, and your Shizun is much prettier than you. I'd rather touch him. Really not beating the Shimei allegations. Also tracks if it's just, alternate timeline, super evil Moran. You, Moran bristled. Some ugly thing like you, hiding behind white chess pieces all day long, too afraid to show your ugly mug. You think you have any right to touch my Shizun? I'm too excited, I can't. The child rolled his eyes at Moran as if tired of acknowledging his existence. He returned his attention to Chu Wanning. Chu Zongsha, back at Jincheng Lake I advised you to leave things alone, but you wouldn't listen. I'm so very hurt, you know. Now that this matter has come to my attention, even if you stopped hounding Moran, I would still intend to get to the bottom of things. I knew you'd say that. The child was quiet for a moment, then grinned again. Why are you righteous Zongsha types all so stubborn? He paused again. Fine. Since Chu Zongsha won't leave well enough alone, we'll have to wait and see. I wanted to figure out which was stronger anyway, your Tianwen or my forbidden techniques. Chu Wanning's brows furrowed. Must you slaughter so many innocents to further your ends? He asked darkly. The people of the world are like oranges from Huainan. That's a footnote. Huainan is a famously unsuitable place to grow oranges. The people of the world are like oranges from... What do you mean? Sour. The child started giggling. Super sour. All these worthless people are sour. I hate them. I want to crush them. Step on them. See, kind of sounded like alternate Moran right there. You know what I mean? Moran was at a loss for words. Chu Wanning's voice filled with killing intent. You truly are irredeemable. If it's not literally alternative Moran, then this is being set up as a villain for Moran quite beautifully. Zongsha deems me irredeemable, but I think Zongsha is just as incurable. Our justice differs at the root. Why sweat the small stuff? The child tilted his head to and fro. Just think of our little spat as a game of chess. You won the match at Jincheng Lake. As for this one here at Peach Blossom Springs, since Zongsha has found the ancestral abyss and seen my white chess piece, and I've run out of tricks by which to acquire your little disciple, let's just say you won this one too. He paused, then his eyes crinkled with a smile. In doing so, he squeezed more blood from them. You better watch out. You may have protected him this time, but I wonder if you can protect him his whole life. Chu Wanning did not reply. As for the secret down here, I suggest you keep it to yourselves, the child said, holding a red and gold feather between his fingers. Is that one of the golden feathers used as currency here? Moran asked, alarmed. That's right, the child smiled. These feathers have circulated everywhere by this point. If the two of you keep quiet and leave of your own volition, then nothing will happen. But if you don't behave and try to expose me, these feathers are imbued with the resentful energy of the feathered tribe. They won't kill those cultivators, but they could dissipate the better part of their cultivation. You planned this from the start, Moran said with anger in his voice. Well, of course, the child said, incredulous. Do you think everyone is a dumb brute like you? Moran fell silent. He was so pissed off. He was willing to admit that he was rather straightforward about the way he did things, and that he didn't know much about schemes and strategies. Yet another reason why this is being set up as a perfect foil and antagonist for Moran. Irredeemable, smart as a fucking whip. However, being so overtly called out by this little bastard made him really want to summon Jengui and give him what for, to teach him what it meant to be a real dumb brute. This doesn't do the best for the alternate Moran, theory. considering that even alternate Moran probably wouldn't be this strategic. But then again, if he really wanted to, he could learn. I don't know. Shit's crazy. Chuzongsha, I'm sure you know what's best for everyone involved. Even if the others learned the truth, if their cultivation were greatly damaged, I'm afraid they wouldn't thank you for your integrity. As I'm sure you heard earlier when you were eavesdropping, I wasn't planning to alarm them to begin with, Chuaning said coldly. For the time being. For the time being? So Zongsho was planning to tell them later then, although there'd be no point in doing that either, the child beamed. Once these people leave, I'll destroy Peach Blossom Springs just like I did Jincheng Lake. Good luck getting anyone to believe you with no evidence. Chuaning's gaze was icy. I'm impressed that you have the nerve to call Moran a dumb brute when you conduct yourself thus. Chuaning's derision washed right over the child. He got up and twirled in place a couple times, at which point a flame flared to life at his feet and slowly burned through his flesh and bones. Why don't you save that for when you catch me? Chuzongsha, out of respect for I'm too excited. Out of respect for your character, I'll remind you one last time. Stay out of this. If you still refuse to listen, then we will certainly meet again. The flames exploded and roared into the sky. The feathered tribe child who had been used as a puppet was burned into nothingness. A translucent white chess piece fell from the sky, spun a couple of times on the ground, and stilled. For a while, there was nothing but silence. I would love for her to pull the wool over my eyes a third time. I'm gonna be so paranoid. This is like the turning point in a, not to bring up Dungeons and Dragons all the time, but this is like the turning point in a D&D campaign, or if it's like new players at a table, when you realize just how underhanded the DM can be, and like you get the rug pulled out from under you, like either again or for the first time really brutally, and you're like, okay, now is when I'm just gonna be paranoid the whole time. It's like, that's it. I trust no one and nothing, not my eyes, not people, not anything. I'm going to interrogate people to the nth degree. This is that moment. For a while, there was nothing but silence. Moran knew the perpetrator wasn't spouting empty threats, but he also didn't want to take this sitting down. So at length he asked, Shizun, are we really going to leave it like this? Do you have any other ideas? Best not take any chances for now. Let's depart Peach Blossom Springs first. Chuanning's expression was dark as well. If he went to the trouble of erecting a soul-locking array to prevent anyone from noticing his use of the Zhenlong chess formation, he still wants to keep things under wraps, at least for now. I will send word to the sect leader to take Shuemeng and Shimei and leave as soon as possible, without alarming the enemy. As for you, Chuaning paused. Both times, he was after you. This time around, he planned to frame you with the hopes of isolating you from help. I'm so sorry. This time around, he planned to frame you with the hopes of isolating you from help. Like, I don't know, feigning illness and stopping you from going and being with your little shidi, so you would have to stay here and... I'm gonna explode. I'm gonna explode. There's no need for you to do anything further with regard to this matter. The sect leader will step in and take care of it. What should I do then? Moran asked. It wouldn't be right to make others take care of my mess while I sit on my hands and do nothing. What are you trying to prove at this juncture? It's obvious what that man is after. The tree spirit at Jincheng Lake fell, so he's looking for a replacement. You are a spiritual essence of wood, suitable for his purposes, but if he can't get to you, then he'll go for the next best thing and look for some other substitute. Chu Wanning paused again, and once he finds that something, it will be another massacre. He must be stopped. That's not wrong, but Shizun, it's not like spiritual essences are all that easy to find. If he wants to find a substitute, he'll have to... Moran suddenly stopped talking and lifted his head. He stared at Chu Wanning for a while. If that little bastard wants to find other spiritual essences, he'll have to check sect by sect. Even so, cultivators don't expose their spiritual roots for any old reason. They only do so when choosing a new weapon or a refinement crystal in order to check their compatibility. So the simplest way to test for a spiritual essence would be to sell weapons and spiritual stones. Which means if we keep watch on the weapon markets near the sects in the coming days, we'll have a pretty good chance of sniffing the bastard out. A perfectly cogent point. Actually. Unfortunately, this guy's like 10 steps ahead of them at any one given turn, which I love in a villain. I love smart villains. After Moran had said all this, he realized Chu Wanning was looking at him thoughtfully, and he couldn't help but second-guess himself. I guess? It's a good guess, Chu Wanning said slowly. A moment later, he got the feeling that Moran was a little too informed, and his eyes narrowed in suspicion. Moran? Was there something you're not telling me? What could I possibly have to hide from Shizun? Moran said, but the hairs on his back stood on end, and he felt as if Chu Wanning's eyes, clear as glass, were staring right through his reborn body and directly at the soul cowering within. A moment passed in silence, and Chu Wanning thankfully didn't press the subject. Lowering his eyelashes, he said, "Starting now, you will come with me to covertly investigate the major sects. For the time being, we will not be returning to Xishang Peak." How are you going to do that as a 6-year-old? You only got one day, my man. What is this? What? We're doing what? That's what we're doing now? What? You will come with me to covertly investigate the major sects. For the time being, we will not be returning to Xishang Peak. Bruh, you are a child. You are not literally a toddler. 6 years old is a bit old for that, but you are a baby fetus kid. What are you gonna do to bypass? You only got so many pills. What's happening? That was the end of the chapter, by the way. We're on page 353 for chapter 77, which is called This Venerable One Feels Very Awkward. These chapter titles. Okay. All right. Sure. Why not? Chu Wanning and Moran left Peach Blossom Springs and traveled all over the map, searching for information regarding when markets opened at the various sects. After several days of hasty travel, they finally decided to stay a night at an inn in a small town. What did my brain miss? Now my ADHD had to have missed something. Because it's been days. He would be back to child, right? Like, what did I miss? Yeah, thank you. Several days? How did that work? I cannot remember it. Am I crazy? Or is this like he had a very limited number of pills, so if he's taking the rest of them? But even then, I don't think there were several days left worth, you know? Keep reading? Oh, my bad. They'd hardly rested since leaving Peach Blossom Springs, so Moran had retired to his own room a while ago. Chu Wanning sat at a table, lit a candle, and contemplated the porcelain bottle in his hand under warm yellow light. Inside the white jade porcelain bottle, were 30 or so golden pills. It was fortunate that the Xuanji elder had brought this bottle with him when he came. Thank you. You're backtracking a little bit to cover that, but sure. If not for that, Chu Wanning didn't know what identity he would have had to assume with Moran. This is new medicine from Tanlung. There's about 30 in there, Xuanji had told Chu Wanning back at the cave. He did some research in the ancient archives and changed some ingredients, so one pill will allow you to regain your adult form for 7 days. Here, these will last you a while. Okay, like, convenient, but okay. Send Tenlung my thanks. There's no need for thanks, Xuanji smiled with a wave of his hand. Tenlung puts on a stern face, but he's very curious about your condition. Oh, right, he also said to let you know that this medicine isn't too stable. Intense emotions might diminish its effectiveness, so be careful about that. Chu Wanning was caught up thinking through Xuanji's words when he heard a knock at the door. He quickly tucked the porcelain bottle away and extinguished the incense in the burner. Come in. Moran had just gotten out of the bath, so he walked into Chu Wanning's room wearing only a thin bathrobe while wiping his long hair, which was dark as black jade. What in the Captain Kirk is this? What are you trying to do to this man? If you haven't seen Star Trek the original series, there is a scene in which Kirk, shirtless, with his shirt around his shoulders, calls Spock in for just like a normal conversation. You know, nothing homoerotic here. What are you trying to do to this poor man? Moran had... Sorry, I was... that wouldn't be the worst moment to relive. Chu Wanning cleared his throat, thankful that his face remained neutral, before eventually saying, What is it? Wait, no. Sorry. Moran, still, what, 17? I keep having to remind myself of that, because I keep imagining just an adult who has been... My brain does something weird with that, because it's not visually in front of me all the time. My room is no good. I don't like it. Shizun, can I sleep on your floor tonight? Moran was being awfully vague, and Chu Wanning wasn't that gullible, so he obviously sensed that something was up. What don't you like about it? It's just no good. Moran snuck a glance at Chu Wanning before mumbling, The sound insulation is terrible. There's only one bed. Chu Wanning furrowed his brows, too noble and chaste by nature to catch his meaning. Without another one... The sound insulation is terrible. No. I get it. I got it. Without another word, he pulled on his outer robe and walked barefoot to Moran's room. Moran couldn't have stopped him if he tried, and so could only follow after. It's a little spare, but not so much as to be intolerable. Chu Wanning stood in the room and looked around, a tinge of chiding in his voice. When did you get so spoiled? Then a series of crashing sounds came from the room next door, like something heavy had fallen to the floor. Moran couldn't bear to listen anymore, so before things got even worse, he reached out and tugged the corner of Chu Wanning's sleeve. Shizun, he pleaded, let's leave already. Chu Wanning's brows furrowed. Really, what's the matter with you? Just what do you find so objectionable? Moran opened his mouth, but before he could get his words together... They're gonna make me read this. Coquettish giggles drifted over through the wall. Oh, no. Just read about a dead child's body getting puppeted by the villain of at least the Ark and then being set on fire afterwards. That, fine. This, give me a second. No, but it's hilarious too. They make what they're into so apparent. Changangji is so naughty, always bullying me. No, wait. Babe, this peony on your chest is so pretty. Let me take a whiff, see if it smells nice too. The walls were so thin that they could hear even the rustling of clothes on the other side. The rough pants of the man and the sweet moans of the woman mingled together into something truly harrowing to the ears. Incredibly, Chu Wanning didn't understand what was happening. At first, thank God for the at first, it wasn't until a few moments later that he put two and two together and his pretty eyes flew wide open while the color of his face changed rapidly from white to red to blue, then finally settled on ashen as he cursed, shameless, and stormed out of the room with a sweep of his sleeve. Moran failed to hold it in and started chuckling quietly behind him. Luckily, Chu Wanning was so flustered that even his arms were swinging out of sync as he walked stiffly away, so he didn't notice Moran laughing at him. Only after getting back to his room and downing a whole cup of tea did Chu Wanning finally regain some semblance of composure, because also, intense emotions... Which, you want to talk about the inner child metaphor really coming out? He nodded toward Moran. Such obscene speech is indeed detrimental to one's cultivation. You may stay here tonight. Oh. Truth be told, when Chu Wanning had suddenly appeared at Peach Blossom Springs and done everything in his power to protect Moran without doubting him in the slightest, Moran... Oh my god, I forgot the, really awful art of the dead chick. Well, since we're coming up at the end, I'll find it at the end. Huge note right next to me. All right. Oh, Jesus. Where in the heck? Hang on. Moran had been beside himself with shock and happiness in equal measure. Now that things had settled down, he couldn't help feeling giddy. At this moment, under the candlelight, his Shizun's habitually impassive face somehow seemed a lot cuter. Sitting cross-legged on the floor with his chin propped up, Moran's eyes lit with his smile as he stared at Chu Wanning. What are you looking at? I haven't seen Shizun for so long. I just want to take an extra look. The youth's tone carried his smile, and his gaze was warm and bright. Now that Moran studied him, Chu Wanning really did look quite like Shia Shidi. Chu Wanning glared. Instead of looking at me, go dry your hair. How are you going to sleep with it dripping like that? I forgot the towel in my room, Moran grinned. Shizun, do it for me. Okay. Moran? You are going to kill the man. Chu Wanning eyed him. For a period of time, Shui Meng had been injured and unable to lift his arm, and whenever he washed his hair, his Shizun had dried it for him. Chu Wanning had always done it very quickly by regulating his spiritual energy to warm the towel and evaporate the water. Chu Wanning looked at Moran and his perfectly functional limbs, then humphed coldly. You're neither sick nor injured. Why would I do it for you? Still, he waved him over. The candlelight cast warm light on Moran's incomparably handsome face. It had already been almost a year since his rebirth, and he was reaching that age when growth spurts occurred. Without really noticing it, he had gotten quite a bit taller these past few months. At present, when he sat on the bed, he was nearly the same height as Chu Wanning. This height made it a little difficult for Chu Wanning to wipe his hair, so Moran leaned back on his arms and shifted his body lower. Standing at the side of the bed, Chu Wanning rubbed his long hair dry with an exasperated expression. Moran yawned contentedly, closing his eyes to enjoy this rare moment of peace. Outside the window, a frog croaked now and again. Shizun. Did you know? The Feathered Tribe's illusion sent me back to Linan 200 years ago, and I met someone named Chushun. The rubbing didn't even pause. How would I know that? Moran rubbed his nose with a grin. He looked like you. A long pause. Then, there are plenty of similar-looking people out there. Nothing strange about that. No, really,
Moran said, all serious. You were practically cast from the same mold. Shizun, do you think he might be your ancestor? It's possible, Chu Wanning replied mildly, but with something from 200 years ago, who can say? He had a son who looked like Shiashidi, Moran continued. I feel like all this is a bit too much to be coincidence. Shizun, is Shiashidi perhaps a lost relative of yours? I don't have any relatives. That's why I said lost, Moran mumbled. He was so close to Chu Wanning that he could detect the light, soothing fragrance of Haitang. It smelled so good. Whether in their previous lifetime or this one, Chu Wanning's scent always seemed to soothe him. In his past life, whenever he returned from a bloodbath, he had always needed to bury his face in the crook of his Shizun's neck just to breathe again. Whether he wanted to admit it or not, he was already hopelessly addicted to Chu Wanning's scent. He closed his eyes and slowly relaxed into the familiar peace, mind drifting in the flow of time. In his last lifetime, he would, on occasion, return to the empty Wushan palace after another slaughter, soaked head to toe in rain. He had clearly committed countless sins, but he was nothing more than a drenched stray with no home to speak of. At such times, he would sit and wrap his arms around Chu Wanning's waist, bury his face against his abdomen, and have his Shizun stroke his hair over and over again. It was the only way to calm the madness within. Those bygone dreams were things of the past, of another life, but with his eyes closed, they seemed like only yesterday. Chu Wanning noticed that the chatterbox had stopped talking and lowered his lashes to glance down at him. In the dim light of the candle, Moran's face was relaxed, at peace. Although his face still had a touch of the soft tenderness of youth, his features had matured with striking definition, like a natural handsomeness blooming through haze that still carried the deadly freshness and vitality of the young. Chu Wanning's hand wavered for a split second, and his heart seemed to beat a little faster. He had no idea what compelled him to say in a soft voice, Moran. Moran absent-mindedly mumbled a reply. Then, as if exhausted, he leaned closer and pressed his face against Chu Wanning's waist, just like he once had in his past life. Chu Wanning was struck speechless. His heartbeat was rapid in his chest, like war drums on a battlefield. The reverberations made him dizzy. Chu Wanning pressed his lips together. Not knowing what else to do, he could only continue to wipe Moran's hair, steaming away the last droplets of water. A long while passed in this fashion, until he set the towel down, brushed aside some stray strands of hair from Moran's forehead in passing, and said in a low voice, All done. You can go to sleep now. Moran opened his eyes, black with a tinge of purple and still a bit dazed. After a few moments, they gradually became clearer. When he finally broke out of his daze and noticed that he had gone so far as to give in to habit and lean into Chu Wanning's waist, and even more unexpectedly, that he hadn't, in fact, been shoved off, Moran was startled, to say the least. His eyes opened wide in stupefied astonishment, making him look just like a dumb dog. Chu Wanning had at first still felt a bit uneasy, but he couldn't stop himself from smiling at that look on Moran's face. As Moran realized that he was actually smiling, however lightly, it was definitely a smile. His eyes became even rounder. He sat up straight, hair a bit of a mess, and suddenly said with utmost seriousness, Shizun, you have a scent. It smells really nice. Chu Wanning was once again struck speechless. Moran paused, then suddenly furrowed his brows, as if trying hard to remember something. When he did manage to remember it, consternation crept into his expression. That's strange, he mumbled. Doesn't Shidi also smell like that? Chu Wanning's expression went instantly rigid. He flung the towel onto Moran's head before he could react and physically tossed him off the bed. I'm tired now, he said coldly. Get the hell off and go to sleep. Moran landed stupidly on his back, caught completely off guard. He lay on the floor in a daze for a while before sitting up and rubbing his nose, not mad at all, and obediently got up to make his bed on the floor. That's the end of the chapter. And also the stopping point for today. Well, so wait, sorry. Did I even say the page number in the next chapter? I did not. I didn't. Flew right out of my head. We're on page 361 for chapter 78, which is called This Venerable One Shizun Has a Nightmare. So there's that to look forward to on Tuesday, son of a bitch. Let me find the art that I missed earlier. I think it's just back here. Yeah. Let me find the art. It's right here. It's really pleasant. Totally. Very pleasant, easy art. I can see why you would be anticipating this. But here's the art. Oh my god. Was that really? I don't think it could possibly be. But I think that was really... It was either a rare moment or kind of the first moment of like a really charged on both sides kind of moment. That feels crazy to say, but there's something about that felt distinctly new and different from what we've had so far, which is why it was like grabbed by the chest, will not let go. That felt like that wasn't like a turning point, but that felt like a distinct, not a step forward. The tension ramped up a bit after that. We have now ramped up the UST. What the hell am I even doing? Tuesday. We'll be here. I think we only have... Oh, sorry, I did not stop at the right place. Hang on. I just went ahead and threw a bookmark in right at the art. We are on 352 of closer to 500. Oh, okay. So we won't finish this next week, but I think like the Tuesday after this coming Tuesday, we'll get to the end of this frickin' volume. Whatever the hell that means. All right. So I will be here on Tuesday at the same time to keep reading for that. And also like a nightmare. Like if it's the same night and then he also has a nightmare and we get like more of what we just got somehow. And I've got to wait the whole last weekend plus some change for that. I keep not choosing, but it just keeps turning into really choice cliffhangers for this series, but like especially volume 2. Anyway, I might relive that a few times in my head. I might reread that actually. Anyway, I hope you're having a great week. I hope you have a lovely weekend. And of course, it's Friday tomorrow. Thank frickin' God.
So I will see you guys on Tuesday at the same time for the same thing. I love you all very, very much. I hope you're having a wonderful day. And I will see you in a few days for more of Erha. All right? Okay. I'll see you later.